Can we say that we're truly doing enough to give all the children of this country the chance they deserve to live out their lives in happiness and with purpose? We're not doing enough, and we will have to change.
Newtown, certainly through no choice of its own, has become the center of a national conversation when it comes to guns. It is the latest, as we said, in a long string of mass shootings that our country has suffered through. And after each one, there's a closer look at the high-powered guns used in the attacks. And after each attack, we noticed a very strange and an eerie symmetry. Andrew, been taking a look at the prevalence of these shootings and some of the commonalities along with them.
And it's a story that we've had to report on so many times, Rich. Adam Lanza, the shooter in Newtown, now joins the ranks of Jared Loughner, James Holmes, Sun Hui Cho, and so many others from so many other incidents. But will the aftermath of this tragedy be different? Will this massacre in Newtown fundamentally change the narrative? Only time will tell. In the meantime, gun enthusiasts, they're stocking up.
The statistics are staggering. On Black Friday, U.S. shoppers weren't just buying toys and electronics, they were also buying guns, and in record numbers. On that single day, the FBI did computerized background checks on more than 154,000 firearms purchases. And in November alone, Americans bought a whopping 2 million guns. Additional facts that may surprise you: there are more registered gun dealers and stores than major supermarkets, more gun sellers than McDonald's restaurants. The overwhelming majority of gun users are law-abiding citizens, but authorities say the millions of guns in circulation guarantee that disturbed people will often be able to obtain them.
And roughly how many gun dealers are in this area?
There are about 400 gun dealers in a 4-county area. Just within 10 miles of the incident, there are 36 gun dealers.
In the case of Adam Lanza, law enforcement sources say the handguns and assault rifle used in the shooting were bought legally.
In America, unless you have a felony conviction or you're adjudicated by a court to be mentally incompetent, you have ready access to firearms.
Lanza now joins the ranks of mass shooters Jared Lee Loughner, James Holmes, and the Virginia Tech shooter. And now the nation is left with a perplexing question. How do you keep weapons from men like this when there are an estimated 200 million guns already in circulation?
And if those numbers weren't staggering enough, there were reports of long lines and even runs on some gun shops across the country, all in the days following the shooting in Newtown. Rich?
And for more, I want to bring in our next guest, Richard Aborn. He's the president of Citizens Crime Commission of New York City. Mr. Aborn's also the former president of Handgun Control Incorporated, which is now known as the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. Mr. Aborn, thank you for a few minutes.
My pleasure.
Simply put, Richard, 20 babies. Does that equate a tipping point in this debate that we've talked about seemingly forever? Is there going to be enough momentum, you think, that whether it's Washington or the public finally does something more than gnash its teeth and wring its hands?
Well, your question perfectly captures the dilemma. Unfortunately, tragically, in a way that we can't comprehend, this may in fact be the tipping point, but it will completely depend on the American people. If the American people keep the kind of pressure up that we've seen in the last 48, 72 hours, then yes, we're going to get action out of Washington. I think the president is very close to doing something very supportive. He was quite clear last night that he's had it, and I think we've all had it. And it's not a time to mince words. We have to be direct with our leaders in Washington. They really have to lead, and the only way that's going to happen is if the American people keep up this pressure.
You know, Richard, over the weekend, folks that aren't even overly politically involved or motivated, they saw the pictures of the kids and they saw their own son or daughter. And as you said, the word enough I heard quite a bit. That said, you know what always happens now. After the immediate grief and the rage, then it says, well, this is hard, if not really complex. Even if we stop all the, let's say, assault weapons from getting manufactured or sent out to the public, there's still so many guns out there, you can't stop everything. And already I'm seeing some congressmen saying, hey, why don't we arm the teachers here? That would have stopped everything. That whole common narrative is, albeit slowly, it's starting to creep back into it. How do we get from where we are now to some meaningful changes that don't go into the whole gun grabbing BS that you and I both know this isn't about?
So one of the things we have to do is just reject the nonsense that there's nothing we can do, because there's a lot that we can do. Every single time we pass a gun control law, every single time law enforcement steps up its activity, every single time a state takes on this issue, we save lives. And if we had an hour, I could walk you through each and every example. It is nonsense that there's nothing we can do. We banned assault weapons in 1994. By the time those assault weapons had started to disappear, the Congress, in its infinite wisdom, decided to put those guns back on the street. That was wrong. That was morally reprehensible. They need to take them back off the street. The same thing for these large capacity magazines. In every single mass shooting we've seen, including in Newtown just last Friday, these large capacity magazines have been used. Let's get those off the streets. And then let's tighten up the conditions under which people can buy guns. Right now, 40% of all the gun sales in the United States are done without a background check. That's ludicrous. All gun shows should go through a background check. How do we do that? We close what we call the gun show loophole. That would have an enormous impact. And then, yes, we need to make sure that mental health records are in the National Instant Check System, so that if somebody who has a mental health history goes to buy a gun, they are stopped because of their mental health history.
You know, Richard, every time there's been a mass shooting, there's a direct connection where people run out to get guns. Without boring everybody with all the data, in short, we got more guns than people in this country. Out of every gun made in the world, more than half of them are bought in the U.S. It's a culture thing. And how, if it ever, does that change?
So you ask a very important question, and I need to be clear about this. The reality is the vast majority of gun owners are law-abiding, decent citizens who will never use a gun improperly. And frankly, they need to speak up as well, because they are beginning to be tarnished, and I think unfairly, as being part of the problem here. So yes, there are some 350 million guns in this country, but by and large, they will never harm anyone. We have to focus on those that should not have a gun. And those that should not have a gun generally go into either the legal or the illegal market to get those guns. They're not breaking into people's homes to get them. Well, the reality is we have no interest in banning all guns. There's no need to ban all guns. There's zero purpose served by banning all guns. We need to focus on illegal guns, and people with mental health issues are getting access to guns.
Hey, Richard, finally, the people I always thought that should be as outraged, even more than you or me about this, should be both law enforcement and then also responsible gun owners who are getting tarred here because of the irresponsible actions of others. Are you guys going to reach out to those people to say, no one's doing a gun grab here, but you guys more than anybody else should insist here that you have to get a license, that you got to be able to show that you can use this weapon properly here and keep the people that shouldn't have them from ever getting them in the first place? If we get those people to be the most vocal for change here, then we get change in this country.
Yes, you're exactly right. So I led the Brady campaign during the fight over the original ban on assault weapons, the Brady bill, excuse me, and the ban on large capacity clips. The reason we were able to beat the NRA and pass those bills is because we assembled a very broad coalition that included law enforcement. Law enforcement was front and center in the gun control debate in this country. Why? Because they know better than anybody else in this world the havoc that guns reap every single day. I was a homicide prosecutor in this town. I know what guns do. So law enforcement, I am sure, will be back out there again. Gun owners are beginning to make themselves known for exactly the reason you said. Most of them are very responsible and don't want to be tarred with this. And if you look at the polling of gun owners, you see increasing support for these sorts of reasonable measures. So gun owners have got to get out there and say, there's nothing inconsistent with regulating guns so we keep them away from criminals and people with mental health issues, while at the same time allowing law-abiding citizens to get possession of guns under circumstances. Yes, you should have to get a license, you should have to go through safety training, that weapon should be registered, and that weapon should be locked up. Those are not unreasonable things to ask for, and I believe increasingly gun owners are going to say, yes, that's the right thing to do.
Richard Aborn, thank you very much for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
All right, we're going to jump to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to bring the table in and talk about concrete examples of what can be done in this political climate to try and keep guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals. Stay with us.
They keep saying on the TV, oh, Newtown's such a nice town. It doesn't matter, nice town, not a nice town. It could happen anywhere.